Okay, thinking more like a service provider, not a worker. This is a critical concept to get your head around if you're going to be a successful contractor. Imagine the scenario for a minute. You'd like to get some work done on your house. Your significant other is keen on a lovely new wall in the garden. You fire up Google and what do you search for? Bricklayer, wall building services, etc. You then somehow manage to get a couple of people to come round and explain your requirements to them. Yeah, I'd like it to be about 4 metres long, go about from there to there, have some planters and lights and a nice little seat built in. I'd like you to use those nice buff coloured multi-size bricks with some nice coping stones on top. Okay, no problem. I'll come back to you in a couple of days with a quote and I'll fit you in at the start of next month. Lovely. The first guy comes back to you. I charge £200 a day and £80 for my apprentice. You need to buy all the stuff, but I can get a discount of juice and I'll stick it on my van. Should take me about 6 days. The second guy comes back to you. Quote, £2,800. Full spec written down. Breakdown. Materials, £1,000. Labour, £1,800. All work covered by a 1-year guarantee. The work will be completed by the 15th of next month. Now, unless you're looking for trouble, you're going to choose the second guy. Why? Because he's giving you a fixed price for a fixed job. Doesn't matter how many people are working on it or how long it takes. He's giving you a fixed date and will sort it if it goes wrong. He is a service provider. The first guy, well, he's probably going to turn up, get going, forget what was agreed and ask you questions along the way, end up taking twice as long and generally hold no accountability for the outcome. Perhaps I'm being a little unkind because there are some decent tradespeople out there, of course, who work that way. But you know what I'm getting at. He's a worker. He just wants his day rate, whatever the outcome. So, why should it be any different in the professional services scenario? You're probably currently thinking and acting like a worker. You do what the boss says. If she changes the goalpost, you just run with it. If you come in one day and get asked to look at something else too, you get on with it. Maybe you push back a little bit, but ultimately, you get on with it. It takes as long as it takes, even if the management get grumpy, but you take your salary at the end of each month and away you go. As they say on Family Fortunes, you need to get your head into the space of being a service provider for many reasons. Firstly, some legislative changes happened in 2021, known as off-payroll, or more commonly, IR35, that impact how you are taxed, e.g. like a permanently employed member of staff. You need to be a service provider to stay outside IR35 and maximise the profits of your limited company. I'll tell you more about IR35 in one of our other videos. Often, in fact, almost every time, unbelievably, the person to whom you are contracted will not be able to be specific. There may be an overall programme or project delivery date and budget, but unless you are that single on-point individual, which is rare, you'll be part of a bigger machine. So you need to define the spec of your cog. Time, cost and quality, which is also could be used as the word scope. You need to do this and write it down, ideally in your contract, but afterwards by email will do. It sets clear expectations. If you're not a PM, project manager, this may not be a familiar acronym, but it should also document your RAID, risks, issues, assumptions and dependencies. These are your foresight excuses if something goes wrong. Once agreed, you'll need to stick to these, and if something does change, document it succinctly back to whoever you're providing the service to, so everyone is uber clear what the score is. If you don't do that, what I've just said, your line manager, and by the way, as an outside IR35 contractor, you never have a line manager, you have a supplier manager. That person will make assumptions. Quite often, they're not very good at confrontation and or clarity, and what tends to happen is they get more and more irate and annoyed with perceived output that you're producing or lack of progress until they basically blow up or their boss inquires. Neither is a good place to be. You need to be really on top of this and report your progress, even if you're not asked for it, in a very clear manner. Get into the routine of providing at least a weekly update of where things are. It will stand you in excellent stead. Here's a section we affectionately call How to Get More Shit Done. This diagram is shamelessly ripped off from the book Getting Things Done by Dave Allen. Highly recommend reading it. Your brain is great at thinking, but terrible at remembering things. Anything that does not belong where it is, the way it is what we call an open loop. We therefore need to transform all the stuff we attract and accumulate into a clear inventory of meaningful actions, projects, and usable information. We'll cover in this section the 5 steps of mastering workflow, the 3 requirements to make the capturing phase work, and the Getting Things Done workflow chart. So, let me repeat. Your brain is great at thinking, but terrible at remembering things. Anything that does not belong where it is, the way it is an open loop, which will be pulling on your attention if it's not appropriately managed. You must use your mind to get things off your mind. Most often, the reason something is on your mind is that you want it to be different than it currently is, and yet you haven't clarified exactly what the intended outcome is. You haven't decided what the very next physical action step is, and/or you haven't put reminders of the outcome and the action required in a system that you trust. And by a system, I don't mean a computer system necessarily. It could be a piece of paper, a diary, something like that. Until your thoughts have been clarified and decisions have been made, and the resulting data has been stored in that trusted system, you absolutely know you'll access and think about when you need to. Your brain will be working away on that job. We need to transform all the stuff we attract and accumulate into a clear inventory of meaningful actions, projects, and usable information. Getting things done requires 2 basic components: outcome, defining what done means, and action, what doing looks like. You need to control commitments, projects, and actions in 2 ways. Horizontally, maintaining coherence across all the activities in which you're involved, and vertically, managing thinking, development, and coordination of individual topics and projects. The 5 steps of mastering workflow are: capture, collect what has your attention; clarify, process what it means; organise, put it where it belongs; reflect, review frequently; and lastly, engage, simply do. The 3 requirements to making the capturing phase work are: every open loop must be in your capture system and out of your head. You must have as few capturing buckets as you can get by with, and you must empty them regularly. When you're processing an item, ask yourself, what is it and is it actionable? If it's not actionable, there are only 3 possibilities. Trash, it's no longer needed. Incubate, no action is needed now, but something might need to be done later. Reference, the item is potentially useful information that might be needed for something later on. If it's actionable, you have 3 options. Do it. If an action will take you less than 2 minutes, it should be done at the moment it's defined. Delegate it. If the action will take longer than 2 minutes, ask yourself, am I the right person to do this? If the answer is no, delegate it to the appropriate person. Or defer it. If the action will take longer than 2 minutes and you are the right person to do it, you'll have to defer acting on it until later and track it on 1 or more next actions lists. Being organised means simply that where something is matches what it means to you. David Allen, the author of Getting Things Done, defines a project as any desired result that can be accomplished within a year that requires 1 or more action steps. This is important in the context of being a contractor. The more organised you can be, the more of a delivery machine that you can turn yourself into, the more useful you will become to your clients. As a result, you'll start to make your way up the financial pyramid of success, up Maslow's hierarchy, and start to work towards your why, achieving your big goals and changing your life forever. I would highly recommend reading Getting Things Done by David Allen. Monkey branch or leap of faith. For the purposes of this section, I'm going to assume you're currently permanently employed. Monkey branching means to make sure you've got something else definitely lined up before you let go of your previous branch. A leap of faith is exactly that. You don't know that you've definitely got something lined up in terms of a contract. You're just going to take that leap of faith and hope it all works out. That's the difference between monkey branching and taking a leap of faith. So, let me ask you, what notice period are you on today? If you're on a 1 month notice period, I'd say you are definitely able to monkey branch. Why? Because by the time you accept an offer on a job or a contract, and you go through the new starter onboarding process, and you'll be at the end of your notice period, you can utilise any holiday or negotiate a slightly earlier leave. And if you agree a start date with a new client, once they want you, ultimately they would wait a week or two if they really want you. When you've got something like a 3 month notice period, that's much more difficult, unless you know you can leave earlier, e.g. gardening leave. You will need to take the chance and hand your notice in if you want to go contracting and leave your permanent job. This gives you 3 whole months to find a contract. Probably choose to do it at better times of the year, e.g. avoid quieter periods around kind of November to January when typically people are winding down for the holiday season. It takes on average someone to find a contract 7 to 8 weeks, I would say. In either of these scenarios, I need to tell you something really important. Always tell the recruiters what they want to hear. You are immediately available. If you don't tell the recruiter you're immediately available, you'll be shoved to the bottom of the queue and ignored. Redundancy. If you're holding out for a redundancy package, for example, be clear that you're making an informed choice on the maths. Here's one example. A colleague of mine was holding out for redundancy payment, about £30,000. A lot of money, right? She was going to leap in January, but she ended up leaving in May due to the redundancy timescales that were set by the company that she was working for at the time. The opportunity cost of that versus contracting was £40,000. She would have been £10,000 better off by leaving before she waited to get the redundancy payout. Refer back to the calculation I gave you earlier in this video on calculating a day rate in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. At least then you'll be able to make the right financial choice. Finally, in the mindset section of this video, let's talk about exit planning. What is your exit from contracting? You haven't even started, right? Why are we talking about exit? Well, it's important to be mindful of what your exit plan is. Refer back to your original goals from the why exercise we conducted right at the start of this video. One of the things that I've seen time and time again in contracting is that people get on a day rate and they're happy to renew and renew and renew, chase the next gig, treat it like a job, and it's a bit rudderless. Earning a high rate but losing sight of their objective. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. I'd recommend putting a dedicated slot in your diary every quarter. Go to a calm spot on your own or with your nearest and dearest and review your goals, checking you are on the right path. Because if you get used to a day rate and you're living off that income, if the market turns or if you get to a retirement point, it's really hard to get off the hamster wheel. It's all about the planning, guys. Know when it's time to get off in the same way that you're thinking about getting on.